So, the PTB is finally out, and the new killer is called the Legion. They're actually really neat. So using different cosmetics gives them a different body and voice. Right now we can only play as Frank and Julie, who were members of a 4-person gang. So playing as Frank gives the Legion a male body and voice, and Julie will give them a female body and voice. The other two will come out sometime in the future, and their names are in the lore, and I can't think of the names right now. The power confused me at first, but now I'm slowly getting it. First of all, the Legion moves at 110 movement speed and has a 24-meter terror radius, so basically HAG. Their power is called Feral Frenzy. Using the power uses up his gauge, and they will begin to sprint faster. While they're in Frenzy, you can vault windows and pallets. Pallets will not be broken, but there is an add-on for that. You can't see scratch marks and have a reduced cooldown for missed attacks. Hitting a survivor while in Frenzy mode will inflict Deep Wounded status effect. They will also be injured, of course, if they're not already injured. Then you can see survivors who are in your terror radius and don't have the Deep Wound status effect. The Deep Wound status effect makes it so that survivors can be downed instantly by the killer when the gauge runs out. Well, can be downed instantly by the killer. Anyway, if the timer runs out, the survivor will also go down, but the survivor can mend themselves by standing still, or another survivor comes and helps them out, and the Legion will not be able to down a survivor unless they deplete the Deep Wounded gauge while in Frenzy mode, which takes roughly 3 hits. So it's probably best to inflict them with the Deep Wound and then just chase them with 110 movement speed and hit them. And after Frenzy mode is over, they will be fatigued, similar to the nurse. Now on to his perks. Their perks, because they're more than one gender. His perk, their perks. Okay, first one, Disordance, which makes it so that anytime 2 or more survivors are on the same generator will cause the generator to turn yellow for a certain amount of time. Nice to know where they are and where to go. Mad Grit makes it so that there is no cooldown for missed attacks while carrying a survivor, and hitting a survivor will pause the wiggle timer for a certain amount of time. So basically, stop body blocking. You might end up screwing your teammate. Or do. That'll make a killer very happy. And then, the final perk is the Iron Maiden, which makes it so that you open lockers faster, and survivors who exit lockers suffer from the exposed status effect for 15 seconds and are revealed to you for 4 seconds. It's okay. I don't really know, because I don't think a lot of survivors go in lockers, but this might surprise me how many actually go in, because I'll see them and they will be exposed and I'll make their day a very bad one. Exciting. So my current thoughts on the killer is mixed emotions, honestly, because I see how he can be very difficult to play to get those chases down, to end those chases, since his attacks while using his powers won't down the survivor until that gauge has been depleted. I don't like that he has 110 movement speed, honestly. I think they should be 115, but that's just my opinion, who knows. Maybe with more practice using the power, it'll make more sense why they're 110 movement speed. Similar to the Spirit, I didn't understand why she was 110 movement speed, but now, since I see how strong she can be, it makes perfect sense. So it might be the same case for him, since he can go through windows and pallets and just ignore all that and then hit survivors. The stun off after using his power might mess me up a lot though, if I choose to just hit them once while using his power and then try and hit them without the power. So right now, I think he'll be fine. I definitely won't play him as much as I play Spirit or Trapper or other killers like that. He'll probably, yeah. So, who knows? My whole change in views on the Legion might change after more playing on the PTB. And the lobbies are still taking a long time, so end my suffering, please! So hopefully when this PTB, by the time this PTB is over, hopefully I'll have a better understanding of the killer and be more prepared upon full release. And I'm also excited for the other cosmetics of Joe and Susie, which were the other 2 members of the Legion gang. So that's exciting, and I can't wait for that. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on the killer so far. And now, on to the lore. Frank Morrison was 19 and had little to show for it. He stopped attending school after being kicked out of the basketball team for shoving a referee into the stands. Yet Frank was a man of potential who could light up a room despite his bleak childhood. At 6 years old, he'd been taken away from Calgary to start a circuit of foster homes. No matter how many times he'd lash out, threw tantrums, and got into fights, they'd kept moving him to new, unfamiliar houses. His last move had been 3 years prior to when his last foster dad, Clive Andrews, had picked him up from the adoption center. They'd been on the road for 7 hours before reaching a small bungalow in Ormond. It would be the longest time they'd spent together. Clive was too busy trading cliches for family services. Wow, my English is so bad. Clive was too busy trading checks for family services for drinks at the bar. My dumbness can't even read English. Damn. Ormond was a small, stale place, a remote town of 6,000 inhabitants, where gray winters dragged on for most of the year. Frank did everything he could to get into another adoptive family, but he changed his mind when he caught the attention of a beautiful girl, Julie. Julie was a popular girl who was convinced that she deserved better than a life in Ormond, and Frank, as an outsider, was her ticket out. Frank attended the parties she threw where everyone was younger than him and easily impressed, which he liked. He met the impulsive Joey, who liked to show off, and the shy, naive Susie, who was Julie's best friend. They would hang out at an abandoned lodge up Mount Ormond. Their time together was the perfect break from the boring conformity of their small, insignificant, everyday lives. Frank saw it as an opportunity to shape their lack of experience into something powerful. He lined up nights of debauchery and rampage, testing their limits. Bullying, vandalism, and theft were essentially their weekend plans. It came to a point where they would do anything he asked. Nothing was off limits. When they put their masks on, one evening, Frank dared Joey to vandalize the store that had recently fired him. They snuck inside easily enough, as the building was supposed to be empty after closing hours, but a cleaner who was still there grabbed Julie as soon as she came near. Hearing her stifled cries, a dark impulse took over Frank. He rushed to her aid, knife in hand. Without hesitating, planted the blade into the cleaner's back. As the group stared at Frank in shock, he ordered them to finish the job. Joe clenched his jaw, grabbed the knife, and stabbed the bleeding man in the ribs. Susie didn't want to do it. Frank shouted at her. They had to finish what they started. Julie closed her eyes and stabbed the knife into the man's chest. She handed the wet blade to Susie. They were all in this together now. Susie stared at Julie in disbelief as Frank grabbed her trembling hands and inserted the knife deep into the man's throat. Frank told them to move fast. They mopped the blood off the floor, stashed the body in the trunk of Joe's car, and drove up to Mount Ormond. All four were digging in the muddy snow to dispose of the body where Frank spotted something moving through the woods. He grabbed his knife and broke from the grounds to check it out. The fog thickened around Frank, becoming so dense that he soon could no longer see ahead. He retraced his steps and stumbled on an ominous trail. He followed the eerie path as if called by the darkness. Julie, Susie, and Joe finished digging, but Frank was nowhere to be seen. Julie spotted his muddy footsteps in the snow, and the three of them followed the trail, which took them deeper into the woods. When Julie, Susie, and Joe did not return home that night, their parents thought they'd run away with Frank. Each family came up with their own different story and different theories. The mood of the town changed, however, when a body was found by an abandoned lodge up Mount Ormond. I read that sentence pretty badly, but that's fine. So they're all part of a gang and they're all four in the entity's realm. What fun! It's sucks that he runs at 110 movement speed. But we'll see how that turns out in the future. So with that, that's gonna be the end of this video. So probably next video will be a survivor game because lobbies are taking forever because it's the PTB. So honestly, I'm not surprised. So leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!